It ruled 3 continents for over 600 years. Yet, when the Ottoman Empire finally collapsed, the world barely flinched. No dramatic war, no violent overthrow, just silence. One of the mightiest empires in history vanished almost overnight, and hardly anyone noticed. Why? Because the real collapse had been happening in the shadows for decades. What caused the silent death of an empire? Let's unravel the untold story of the Ottoman Empire's quiet fall, the illusion of power. By the early 20th century, the Ottoman Empire still looked impressive on paper. It had a sultan, a parliament, a capital in Istanbul, and it ruled over parts of the Middle East, North Africa, and southeastern Europe. But beneath the surface, the empire was hollowing out after reaching its golden age under Suleiman the Magnificent. In the 1500s, the Ottoman Empire began falling behind, while Europe surged ahead with the Renaissance, 1300s-1600s, and the Industrial Revolution, mid-1700s to 1800s. The Ottomans stagnated. They resisted new technology and ideas. Printing presses were banned in Arabic script languages for over 250 years. Scientific innovation was discouraged. And when factories, railroads, and steamships reshaped the West, the Ottomans remained largely agrarian and decentralized. The result? An empire locked in time. By the 1800s, Western Europe was colonizing Asia and Africa, while the Ottomans were losing grip over their own provinces. Foreign powers began meddling directly in Ottoman affairs. They loaned money to the empire at high interest rates, leading to financial dependency. By 1881, the Ottomans defaulted on their debt, and the Ottoman Public Debt Administration was created, letting Europeans control key parts of the empire's economy. And yet, they still called it the sick man of Europe. That phrase was coined by Tsar Nicholas I of Russia in the 1850s. It meant that the Ottoman Empire was visibly weak and decaying, but kept alive artificially by the balance of power in Europe. Britain, France, Russia, and others all wanted a piece of Ottoman territory, but also feared each other getting too much of it. That's why, paradoxically, the Ottomans looked stronger than they were. They maintained the illusion of strength by keeping up the grandeur of the Sultanate and Islamic Caliphate, hosting embassies and summits in Istanbul, holding massive military parades, using foreign loans to fund massive state projects like the Hejaz Railway. But these were performances. The real engine of empire, its economy, army, and unity, was sputtering. Sykes-Picot and the betrayal of empire during World War I, the Ottomans sided with Germany and the Central Powers. They hoped a German victory might help them regain lost territories. But behind the scenes, their supposed allies were carving up their empire. In 1916, the British and French secretly signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement, a backroom deal to divide the Arab parts of the Ottoman Empire between themselves after the war. According to this agreement, France would get Syria and Lebanon. Britain would control Iraq, Jordan, and Palestine. Istanbul and central Anatolia were left vaguely undefined, but Russia was also promised parts. This deal directly violated Britain's simultaneous promise to Arab leaders, like Sharif Hussein of Mecca, that they would support Arab independence in exchange for revolting against. The Ottomans, of course, knew none of this until it was exposed by the Bolsheviks after the Russian Revolution. Then came the Treaty of Sèvres, 1920, the final humiliation. This treaty was imposed on the Ottomans by the victorious allies. It stripped the empire of its Arab lands. It gave large parts of Anatolia to Greece, France, Italy, and Armenia. Even Istanbul was placed under international control, and it proposed a Kurdish state in eastern Turkey. To Mustafa Kemal, this wasn't just a bad treaty, it was a betrayal of Turkish sovereignty. He saw it as the final submission of the empire to foreign occupation and domination. While the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed VI accepted the treaty, Kemal refused. He declared it null and void and began organizing resistance. The War Within. The Turkish War of Independence, 1919 to 1923, was the final showdown, not between empires, but within the dying Ottoman state itself. Kemal rallied Turkish nationalists and former Ottoman officers in Anatolia. Their goal wasn't to restore the empire, but to build a new, secular nation-state from its ashes. Fighting erupted across multiple fronts: against the Greeks, who had occupied western Anatolia, against French and Armenian forces in the southeast, against the Sultan's forces, who tried to suppress the nationalists. Kemal established a rival government in Ankara and held a Grand National Assembly, declaring himself the legitimate voice of the Turkish people. By 1922, the tide had turned. Kemal's forces had driven out the Greeks and secured control over Anatolia. The Allied powers, exhausted from war and bogged down in their colonies, were unwilling to intervene. That year, the nationalist government abolished the Ottoman Sultanate. Mehmed VI fled Istanbul aboard a British warship, a moment rich in symbolism. The empire's last ruler exiled by its former ally. The centuries-old Ottoman monarchy had been ended, not by foreign invaders, but by its own people. Even after abolishing the Sultanate, the Ottomans technically remained caliphs, leaders of the Muslim world. The title passed to Abdul-Majid II, who had no real power, but still held symbolic authority. Kemal Atatürk initially allowed the Caliphate to remain, likely as a political compromise. But soon, even that was too much. In March 1924, the Caliphate was abolished. The Ottoman royal family was exiled. Their palaces were seized, their names removed from public life. And then Ataturk began reshaping Turkey at breakneck speed. Islamic law, Sharia, was abolished and replaced by European-style civil codes. The Arabic script was replaced by the Latin alphabet. Hijabs were discouraged in public life. While not formally banned, women were encouraged to adopt Western clothing. Religious schools, madrasas, were closed. The Ministry of Religious Affairs was brought under direct state control. Public calls to prayer, adhan, were temporarily changed to Turkish instead of Arabic. Even the fez, a traditional Ottoman headwear, was banned. Mosques remained open, but the influence of religion in politics and law was drastically curtailed. Kemal's vision was clear. Turkey would not be a continuation of the Ottoman Empire. It would be its opposite. Why the collapse was welcomed so? Why didn't the world react when the Ottoman Empire finally died? Because for decades, both Arabs and Western powers had grown hostile, or at least indifferent. In the Arab world, resentment had been growing. Many Arabs saw the Ottoman state as Turkic, corrupt, and neglectful of Arab interests. They chafed under imperial taxes, conscription, and centralization. During WI, Arab leaders like Sharif Hussein led revolts, aided by British officers like Lawrence of Arabia. To break free from Ottoman control, the fall of the empire was a liberation. Western powers, meanwhile, had long seen the Ottoman Empire as an obstacle to trade, to Christian minorities, and to colonial ambitions. Its fall allowed Britain and France to redraw the Middle East in their own image. So when the empire finally vanished, no one stepped in to save it. A legacy that haunts. Though the empire is gone, its shadow lingers. The artificial borders drawn after its collapse, especially by the Sykes-Picot Agreement, created unstable states, mixing rival tribes and sects into single nations. Many modern conflicts in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Palestine can trace their roots to the post-Ottoman. The idea of the Caliphate still resonates with many Muslims, even as modern Turkey continues to reject the Ottoman legacy. Shows like Ertugrul and Payet stir nostalgia for unity, strength, and faith, all lost in the chaos of the 20th century. And perhaps that's the ultimate irony. The empire that once ruled over 30 modern nations died so quietly, yet refuses to be forgotten. Final thoughts. How does an empire really die? The Ottoman Empire didn't fall with an invasion or a bang. It died in stages. First economically, then militarily, then spiritually, and finally, symbolically. It fell not just from outside attacks, but from within, as its own people lost faith in the old order. Mustafa Kemal didn't just defeat an empire, he erased it. And by the time the world noticed, there was nothing left to save.